Let's bring in Sarah Sanders, the White House press secretary, where we can continue this conversation on immigration. The president is going to head to Calexico tomorrow. Why did he decide to take this trip, Sarah?
For a couple of reasons. One, the president wants to show the progress that we've made on the border wall. There's a section there that has been finished, and he wants to be able to see that. But also he wants to show a lot of people firsthand exactly what is taking place at the border. He's going to get a briefing when he first arrives there from a number of law enforcement officials, the CBP folks, the people that are on the front lines there on the ground, get a real-time update from those individuals. But he also wants America to be able to see that in his presence, and the folks in the media that will be traveling with him will get a chance to see some of the things that are going on the ground and hear from the people that are dealing with this crisis day in and day out.
Well, Sarah, a couple of days ago when the president threatened to close down the border, some people thought, well, he's just negotiating with Mexico because he's trying to say, unless Mexico does something, I'm going to shut it down. Of course, that would be economically, we've heard, disastrous. But has he walked away from that, or are things going better with Mexico, where you're seeing some progress there?
It's something the president is certainly still keeping that option on the table. And as he said, and as a number of us have talked about over the last several days, this is certainly not the president's first choice. But Democrats at this point, their unwillingness to do anything has left the president with very little options. Thankfully, Mexico has stepped up over the last few days. They are working with us to do more, to stop more people from coming into this country illegally.
What are they doing?
But that's... For one, they've helped add a large number of additional checkpoints to stop people before they ever get to the border in Mexico. They are also stepping up the number of individuals that are waiting for their asylum claims in the United States to be processed, and they're holding those individuals in Mexico instead of the United States while that takes place, up to about 300 a day. So there is a lot that they are actually doing that is helping this process, but at the same time, it's not going to be enough. Congress is eventually going to have to get serious about protecting our country, protecting Americans. Yesterday, a few networks spent a lot of time talking about a minor breach at Mar-a-Lago, but they're not talking about the thousands of people that are illegally pouring into this country that are really putting national security at risk. And it's irresponsible the way that that has been ignored by Democrats in Congress, and this president is not going to allow that to continue. If he has to close the border, he will, but that's certainly not his top choice. Look, there are some basic things that Congress could do, starting with allowing unaccompanied minors to be returned and reunited with their family. The fact that a unaccompanied child can come to this country and we do not have the ability to legally return them back home to be reunited with their family in their home country is absurd. That is a simple fix that would drastically not only reduce the influx that we're seeing come across the border, but it would also stop the exploitation of these children through human trafficking, through the cartels, through the coyotes that are using these kids to come across the border. It is absolutely absurd, and frankly, it's dangerous and it's mean and cruel what Democrats are doing by not fixing that basic law so that we can actually help these kids and protect them and reunite them with their families.
I just would love to hear a Democrat stand up and say 100,000 a month is too many, 76,000 in February was too many. I would love to see let them respond to some of the video that we've been able to show. It has proven the president is 100% correct in saying that this was a crisis at the border. It's just hard to imagine a counter-argument. Meanwhile, on the Mueller report, the New York Times making headlines late last night, out this morning, they say some on Mueller's team, unnamed, report was more damaging than Attorney General Barr revealed. What was your reaction? What's the president's reaction to that?
I think it's the same one we've had all along. Democrats continue to show day in and day out that they're nothing but sore losers. At some point, they have to realize that they have been beat by President Trump in the 2016 election. They're getting beat by him day in and day out on issues that actually matter. And I think they're a sad excuse for a political party right now. And at some point, they have to decide that they want to actually govern and they actually want to change things and make America better and join the president in those efforts.
Well, yesterday, Mitch McConnell, he set up a vote in the Senate, and it did pass to make the confirmation hearings shorter. Right now, every single person that has to go through these confirmation hearings faces 30 hours of interrogation and discussion, and now he has, and all of the Republicans voted to lower that. Now it's going to be 2 hours. The president's expressed frustration with how long it's taking people to fill these positions. He's been in office for 2.5 years, and some of these positions are still open. What's his response?
It's absolutely insane that the way the Democrats have held up putting people in place. They complain about things not always working. Well, they're not allowing people to actually take their jobs in their places of government. The president won. He should have the right to pick his team. That's how it works. They've held up nominees, some of them for over a year. As they like to say, elections have consequences. They certainly do. And that happened in 2016. They need to learn to live with it. And if they don't like it, they need to run on something of a message.
Right.
Stop trying to beat this president. Stop trying to attack everything he's doing. He's had an incredible first 2 years.
Sarah,
and just imagine what else he could have gotten done if you didn't have the Mueller report and if he'd actually had a full team in place, because Democrats hadn't obstructed every single person he's put forward.
And Sarah, the president has asked for the Senate to adopt the nuclear option, just a simple majority on a variety of things for the last 2 years. Finally, Mitch McConnell saying, you know what, simple majority on these confirmation hearings, that's okay with me.
Look, I think he's decided enough is enough, and it's time to allow these people, at the very minimum, they deserve to either get a vote up or down. Yeah. The idea that they just have their lives put on hold for a year, sometimes more, while they wait to go through the process, it's completely unfair, and that's not how government should function.
Yeah,
Democrats are really an embarrassment to themselves.
I would think any president's got to get his people in place. Background checks take place, 2 hours, I think is fine. Sarah, real quick, the president, they're asking, the Ways and Means evidently has within their power to get a president's tax returns. They want 6 years. Do you think the president will allow his tax returns to be taken, audited or not?
As the president said yesterday, while his taxes continue to be under audit, he doesn't anticipate that changing at any point anytime soon, and therefore doesn't have any intention to release those returns. But let's not forget, Brian, that the president filled out hundreds of pages in a financial disclosure. You can see a broad range of the president's business investments, all of the different financial interests through that extensive and very exhaustive financial disclosure form that you have to fill out in order to work in the government, in order to run for president, and he's done that. It gives you a very good picture of just how successful he was as a businessman, and I think it should answer all of the questions that anybody might have about his financial dealings.
Exit question. Will the president go to the White House Correspondents' Dinner, which is just around the corner?
You know, he hasn't made a final decision on that. When he's ready to make that announcement, I'll let him do that, but we'll see what happens.
All right, and he'll be at the border tomorrow looking at the beginning of the wall that was built under his reign. Sarah, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
The 2020 presidential campaign is already well underway. On the Democratic side, there are dozens of candidates in the race and possibly dozens more to come. On the Republican side, there's just the incumbent president. Everyone assumes he wants to be reelected. Most presidents do. But what if Donald Trump had decided he's had enough? Too many investigations, too much nastiness, too few upsides. It wouldn't be a crazy conclusion. How'd you like to spend your 70s locked in the White House? So let's say Trump had decided he wants to lose in 2020 and get back to his old life. How would he do that? Let's see. He might start by proposing more than $500 million in Medicare cuts. That's something that nobody outside the libertarian symposia circuit really wants to see. So you do that. Then he'd slash funding for the E-Verify program. That would allow companies to keep hiring illegal alien labor in violation of a key campaign promise. After that, he'd announce for bringing in even more low-skilled workers. That would push down the wages of the people who voted for him, the most vulnerable group in the country. Finally, he'd release a bunch of drug dealers back onto the streets right in the middle of the worst drug epidemic in history. And he'd continue our pointless military intervention in Syria, which in no way benefits the United States. If the president did all that, the message would be very clear. He has no idea what he ran on in 2016. He just wants out. But let's say voters still didn't get the message. Maybe they were too distracted by the Russia hoax to notice. At that point, you'd have to do something really extreme to get their attention, something so mindless and counterproductive that there's literally no way you could get reelected after doing it. You'd raise gas taxes. And in fact, the administration is proposing just that. According to news reports, the White House is negotiating with Democrats to hike taxes on gasoline in order to fund, quote, infrastructure. This is one of those ideas that everyone in Washington loves. It costs them nothing. They're too rich to care what gas costs. And by the way, they don't drive. But if you live outside the coastal cities and you're not rich, higher gas prices are a disaster. They hurt you immediately. That's always true. Anything that raises the price of gasoline, whether it's the Green New Deal or some new tax scheme promoted by a fake conservative think tank, crushes the weakest in our society. Normal people hate it. Many of those people voted for Donald Trump the first time. It's nuts. And it's not like there aren't other, smarter, less regressive options if you want to raise money. There are many of them. We could roll back some of those 2017 tax cuts, which went overwhelmingly to high earners and big companies. We could tax the billions in remittances flowing from the United States to the rest of the world. Remember that idea? We could tax carried interest like the income it so obviously is. We should do that anyway, just on principle. We could even tax capital gains like we tax salaries. Mitt Romney might finally pay the same rate as your dentist, and that would be satisfying. And then we could get creative. How about an 80% tax on all lobbying produced by former members of Congress? That's a good one. How about an iPhone tax? Or how about a tough new tax on a $1 trillion Seattle-based internet retailer whose entire business model depends on using public roads to deliver their packages? Companies like that have put an awful lot of American businesses out of work. They clog our roads. Why aren't they paying for infrastructure? We could go on. Plenty of obvious ideas out there. Hiking taxes on working-class rural people is not on the list, unless you secretly want to retire early. In that case, if you're really sick of the job, go with the gas tax.